is it that smaller businesses are often larger targets, I guess, for fraud, and why do they have higher losses as opposed to like a big business with a lot of resources and employees?
I think it's because just being the nature of being a small business, you don't have as many employees. It's difficult to segregate duties within a business office of a small business when you only have 3 people there, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just easier. You don't have as many people reviewing things, so things can slip through, and it gets easier for a fraudster to take advantage.
Yeah, the bigger companies typically have these kinds of checks in place, fraud prevention policies in place. Small companies don't. That leads to more opportunity, and it leads to less of an ability to detect a fraud early on, making the losses greater.
The key is to not let one person control a financial aspect of the operations. You know, whoever's doing the accounting gives a log to the bookkeeper has to reconcile that to the deposit, things like that. So again, it can be hard for smaller organizations to segregate duties, but just knowing that someone else is going to check their work is a deterrent that will help prevent those types of frauds.
There are policies that you can get that cover this kind of conduct. I think the last presentation Perlman was at, and this would have been a great question for them. But it's out there, that's for sure.
Right, and actually, as part of my audit procedures when I'm auditing nonprofits, I'll look at the insurance policy for the detail as far as to what they're covered for forgery and that sort of thing. Typically, it's a low amount, maybe $50,000, but they have $1 million in the bank account. So I'll alert them to that they might want to consider upping their coverage in case something unfortunate were to happen.
We've had 2 cases where employees were committing fraud against the insurance company by claiming disability against us, so it hurts everyone. And in both cases, an employee, different employees advised me of this. We went out to check it out and found out they were working a second job and collecting disability off of us. And what I find is other employees don't want to see somebody else doing something that could be hurting them, or maybe even that, hey, they're getting something that I'm not getting, you know, a little bit of jealousy almost at times. If you have someone in a high position, especially in the accounting department, make sure that they take off time each year. If a person never wants to take vacation, it almost is a red flag that they're doing something maybe illegal and they don't want to see anybody else to see it.
Absolutely, yeah, you want to have cross-train some of the employees in the office to perform functions while others are on vacation. Because, you know, I always tell them too, I said, you never know, you can get hit by a bus tomorrow. What are you going to do if your valuable, trusted employee is not there? Someone else needs to be able to perform those functions.
If the company is able to learn about activities which are contrary to the policies of the company, and they're able to deal with in this case, mostly federal prosecutors ahead of time, they can avoid certain penalties and preclusions that the company may be subject to because of the actions of their employees. And I think an occasion that you may have dealt, Bob, with those issues where it's almost an interface between the company and the prosecutors to really protect the corporation from further prosecution.
That's very true. It's a very good point. The corporation often has that obligation to its owner, its shareholders, to do that, number one. And in addition, corporations have to be very cognizant of what their reporting obligations are. Some companies are very heavy regulated by the SEC, for example. And the SEC regulations might create an obligation on the employer to report the fraud. And certainly if they don't, they violate the regulations. But by doing so voluntarily, as Lionel suggests, it often will mitigate any kind of penalties that might be imposed on the company itself. So that's very important.